Monster of Canterlot Chapter 44. Fluttershy and I walked through Ponyville on our way to the little cafe in the town proper. While walking, several ponies turned their heads to watch us going by. Smiles on their faces were a very comforting switch from the looks of fear or distaste I was getting just a year ago. I returned the waves offered by the town's ponies. It would seem that Rainbow and her weather crew had made sure the air was cool, with a light breeze keeping it that way. Celestial was also doing her best to put on a show with the beautiful late afternoon sky. I really couldn't have asked for a better night for a date with such a cute mare. Chris! Fluttershy! Pinkie Pie called out to us as she trotted over. Oh, hello, Pinkie, Fluttershy greeted her. Pinkie, how are you doing? I waved to the bouncy mare. Great-orific! I still don't know how any pony could be so annoying and yet so lovable at the same time. But she did it. That's great to hear. I reached out to scratch behind her ears. She flinched, though only for a little. Even though it was barely noticeable, it cut me to my very soul. She did allow me to scratch her, though. I knelt down in front of her. It still bothers you, doesn't it? What happened in Rarity's boutique, I mean. Pinkie put on her best fake smile. No way, silly! She waved a dismissive hoof like it was nothing. But it was something. Especially to me. We're besties, and I know it was an accident. For some reason, though, my body won't listen to my brain. So you're saying if I did this, I picked up Pinkie and held her in one arm, belly up, and then proceeded to tickle you relentlessly, which I did, you'd be totally fine with that? Pinkie couldn't answer. She was far too busy giggling, guffawing, and, of all things, snorting. It was, by far, one of the cutest and funniest things I've ever seen. I was brought out of my revelry by a gentle tap of a buttery hoof. Fluttershy was doing her best to indicate we had to get moving. Somewhat reluctantly, I placed Pinkie back on the ground. I'm sorry, Pinkie, but we have to be going, I told her. She was still giggling when she said, All right, I'll see you too late. Enjoy your date, she waved before she bounced away. What do you think, Flutters? Does that sound like a good idea? She nodded and smiled warmly. All right then, let's get going. Fluttershy giggled. Okay. We had made it to the little cafe and managed to get a semi-secluded table off in the corner. We talked about our homes and our foreheads. One conversation revealed that we had some things in common. For example, we were both bullied, but we always had some pony there to defend us. For me, it was Twilight and her brother. For Fluttershy, it was Rainbow Dash. After that, we had finished our meals and left a very healthy tip being left for the wait staff. From there, we strolled through the fields between Ponyville and Fluttershy's cottage. During said stroll, we talked about all the adventures she's had since Twilight came to Ponyville. She happily told me of how her friends had always been there to help her when she couldn't bring herself to face the danger. What was surprising to me was how brave she could be when it was her friends that needed her. So you really scolded a full-grown dragon? I asked as I plucked the blue wildflower from a bush. Yes, but I was only able to do that because he had hurt my friends. Still, though, the only other pony I've heard of surviving such a feat was my mother. The princess is really that strong? Oh, you have no idea. Thankfully, she always manages to keep her anger under control. Well, almost always. I slipped the flower into her mane over her ear. Fluttershy giggled. I remember. Probably not as well as Rainbow does, I bet. Fluttershy giggled again, and just like every time before, it warmed my heart. I looked up at Luna's moon and determined it was getting late. Luckily, we weren't too far from our home. In fact, we were at our door in only a couple minutes. Oh, looks like we're here. Oh, right. I knelt down before her, lost for a moment in those cyan words of hers, before I told her, Well then, I hope you had as much fun as I did, because I'd like to do this again. Me too. Fluttershy wrapped her forelegs around my neck and hugged me tight. I smiled and returned her hug. After a few moments, she released me. The blush on her cheeks was spreading and making her even cuter somehow. Good night. She smiled as she turned to go inside her cottage. I couldn't help but watch for as long as the door would allow, which was just long enough for me to catch a single flick of her tail. If I had been standing, my knees may have given out. After visions of haunches stopped dancing through my head, I was able to take wing and head for home. Unfortunately, I had to stop for a moment on a cloud. I was having trouble focusing enough to flap both wings at the same speed. I couldn't help but wonder if she still had that Mare Duel costume. "Did you have a good time?" a voice whispered in my ear. "Yeah," I answered in my semi-dreamlike state. "You gonna see her again?" "I sure hope so." "You gonna stare at her butt again when you do?" "I don't know, Rainbow. We'll just have to see what happens." "You get What? How the heck did you know it was me?" There are only a select few mares who would be both able to sneak up on me up here and willing to approach me. Since you don't speak like it's 100 years ago, you're not Luna. You don't smell like cake, so you're not Mom. Twilight doesn't have the guts to tease a pony like that, and Cadence never jokes about matters of the heart. And that leaves only you. Huh, guess that made sense. But how come you weren't startled at first? "Heard you coming." I pointed at my ear. Alicorn hearing. "Ugh, that's cheating," says the pony who breaks the laws of physics for fun. Rainbow couldn't help but chuckle a little. "Yeah, I am kinda awesome." I smirked at her bravado. So awesome. "So, you really do like her, huh?" "Yeah, Rainbow, I really do. I only hope she likes me back." "Wow, you really are from a different world, aren't you?" Rainbow said under her breath. It's funny, though. I'd never seen her as any different than any of my other friends. At least, I didn't think I did. I'm glad Twilight, Bunny, especially Rarity, helped me realize what was going on in my head, and possibly my heart. "Did you talk to Fluttershy about how you were feeling?" "Yes, and we decided to go out and see where this whole thing led." I plopped back on the cloud and sighed. You know what's funny? Ever since we talked, I can't get her out of my head. Sounds like some pony's got the hots for our little town animal caregiver. You know what? I just might. I rolled over onto my belly. Now, how about giving me a push toward home? Rainbow flew up off the cloud and saluted. "You got it, Your Highness!" And with a mighty shove, I was rocketed back toward Canterlot. The next morning, I was being berated with questions by Luna and Celestian about how my big date went. I happily told them everything, excluding my adolescent fascination with her body. They both seemed very pleased with what I had to say. However, there was one who wasn't. Yet another mare, so desperate for attention she stooped to laying with a primate. "Blue blood!" Celestia yelled. "What, dear auntie? I was merely making an observation." I could feel myself starting to lose control. Oddly, though, I wasn't blacking out like I had in the past. I wasn't about to take that for granted, though. I was still fighting to maintain control. Fortunately, I had a secret weapon. Fluttershy's smiling face. I closed my eyes and focused on only that image. As soon as that buttery visage came into focus, the whole world was at peace. I opened my eyes and turned toward the bane of my existence. "Hey, Blue Blood, have I told you who trained me in magic?" "Ugh, I neither know nor do I care." I raised my ringed hand toward him. "Really? Why I will be upset to hear that." "I still don't. Wait. Did you say?" I clenched my fist as if juicing an orange, and Blue Blood's teacup shattered into tiny shards. "Yeah." I stood from the table and walked out. From there, I went to the nearest balcony. "Honey, where are you going?" "Oh, hey, Mom. I'm going to Ponyville," I told her as I flexed my wings. "Well, okay. But I want you to take some guards with you." "Ugh. Mom, you know how much I hate that." "I know, but it makes me feel better when you have some pony with you I know we can trust." Fair enough. "Come on, ponies! Worth those wings! Worth those wings! I want you to give me another 50 wing-ups followed by 10 laps around the course." I touched down next to Rainbow Dash right after she finished her coaching. "Looking good there, Dash. You guys may even get gold this year." "Silver, maybe, but gold is most likely out of reach. All we can do is prepare ourselves." Rainbow froze for a second when she saw who had touched down next to me. Willow. Rainbow squared off with her and flared her wings threateningly. "What's she doing here?" I stepped between the Pegasus and the worried changeling. "It's all right, Rainbow. She's here with me. She's my bodyguard. Or lack of a better term. She's the reason you were almost killed, Rainbow growled as she slowly tried to maneuver herself into a straight line of attack on Willow. First off, I was killed. Secondly, she risked her life to save me. Chrysalis was the reason I died. It wasn't even her fault. Any changeling that disobeys gets punished pretty severely, and she did it anyway. I placed a hand on Willow's withers. I'm not asking you to like her. Just give her a chance. Fine. Rainbow stood but kept glaring at Willow. But keep her away from me. Rainbow shot a dirty look as she went back to her training. Maybe I should go, Willow said as she pawed at the ground. I don't think any pony wants me here anyway. I'm not going to make you stay if you don't want to, but I do want you here. Why? She looked at me with tears in her eyes. What possible good could come from me being here? Exposure. If we can get ponies to see that a changeling can coexist, then maybe we can get your family out of the dungeon. I don't know about you, but I would like to think that maybe, just maybe, our two nations can get along. Willow looked up at me in mild confusion. Seriously? But ponies are our food source. There's no way they'd get along with us. She snuck a glance at Rainbow Dash. Or even try. Back on my world, my species eat all manner of animals and ride horses and ponies for fun or work. Yet here, I'm a prince of a vegetarian nation, and I'm dating one of a female species that I had never heard about before coming here. I look up and catch Fluttershy's eye as she goes around the practice track. She waves down to me, and I can just make out the same blue wildflower from the night before. Willow shuddered for a moment. Wow, you could feed the hive for a week on that love. I smiled down at her. Hers or mine? She chuckled. Both. You don't say. A grin spread across my face. Chris! What were you thinking bringing her here? Willow began to cower at Twilight's voice. You have no idea how ponies will react to seeing a changeling. Probably about the same way they reacted to me. That got her. Like I told Willow, the only way to get ponies to accept the possibility of a union between our two kinds, they had to be willing to accept at least one lone changeling. I suppose you're right, Twilight conceded with a small sigh. Besides, how often does a pony get to study a barely known species by having a one-on-one chat with them? Twilight's eyes expanded as realization dawned. No pony had ever had the opportunity to study a changeling. Not a living one, anyway. Willow, would you be willing to aid Princess Twilight in her studies? Yes, of course I would. Besides, I've just had a very nice meal, she said while rubbing her stomach for effect. Twilight looked to me for an answer. Apparently, Fluttershy and I are quite fond of each other. That means that she must really like me, because even the Queen couldn't absorb my emotions. Interesting. I recognized that look on Twilight's face. I felt a little sorry for Willow as magic started to envelop her. Chris? Was all Willow got out before both she and Twilight were blinked out of sight. I could only laugh guiltily before returning to watching two of my favorite Pegasi, plus one that I only know in passing practice. Rainbow was, of course, blowing through the course like she was born for that sole purpose. Fluttershy was nimble, but even I could outpace her in a straightaway. The real wink wink, ironically, was bulk biceps. As strong as the guy was, there really is only so much one can do with wings the size of a foal's. Soon enough, the three Pegasi landed and lined up, Fluttershy and bulk biceps side by side with Rainbow Dash facing them. Dash had started addressing them and evaluating their progress. I wasn't really paying attention to what she was saying, though. My focus was on something more yellow, especially since Fluttershy was facing away from me. I was snapped out of my brief daydreaming when the three racers threw up a salute to each other and broke up to go about their business. Rainbow shot me another glare before she took off, leaving nothing more than her trademark prismatic trail. Both biceps happily trotted toward town, being temporarily distracted by a butterfly flittering through the field. Fluttershy lazily floated over to me, and I caught her in my outstretched arms. We both laughed while I carried her back to her cottage. Once there, we repeated the actions of the day before. Tea, shower, etc. Afterwards, Fluttershy loaded a basket, and she and I flew off to find a nice cloud to sit on while we ate and enjoyed the sunset. Once again, Celestia didn't disappoint. I was actually starting to think she was doing it on purpose. just for me and Fluttershy. We found a nice, fluffy cloud and sat down to enjoy our sandwiches and fruit. When those were all gone, I laid back with one of my hands behind my head and Fluttershy stretched out across my belly. She was telling me all about growing up in Cloudsdale while I absent-mindedly stroked the fur on her back. There is no better place to watch the stars come out. You know, Fluttershy, I can't help but notice something these past few days. Hmm? What's that? That is, if you don't mind. Well, I've only known you for about a year now, but from that and everything I was told by our friends, not to mention Twilight's letters, you seem different. Like, you're a lot more confident. Fluttershy looked up at me. Is that bad? No, it's excellent. I mean, when you're your normal, shy, and quiet self, you're cuter than a puppy playing with a kitten. But when you're more confident in yourself, it's. I don't know. I looked into her big, beautiful cyan eyes and told her, but I know that I like it. Fluttershy smiled and giggled a little. That caused my heart to melt a little bit. She then craned her neck and surprised me with a gentle kiss on the lips. One so soft, if it weren't for the warmth of her breath, I may not have known it had happened at all. But since I did, I'll never forget it. And that was one of the best moments of my life.